Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Another first in this run of Great British Bosses. Bosses could be the person in charge, or it could be used by someone who gives orders to someone. So for us, it's a chance to speak to women and men who help run British sport. CEOs, performance directors, executive directors, head coaches, we've had them all. And in this case, for a very first time, captains. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and our guest in this edition plays a sport that's been in the Olympic Games since day dot. Well, the second edition, 1900, virtually day dot. That, incidentally, was the same year as men's football joined the programme. There's some similarities there. It's played with a round ball, but that is pretty much where that similarity ends. The good news, Great Britain's women's team are now eyeing a place in LA 2028.
Hi, I'm Kathy Rogers, and I'm the current captain of the GB women's water polo team.
The sport is water polo, Kathy. Thank you for joining us. Our first ever captain on Great British Bosses. And I think it's fair to say it's been quite a year for the women's water polo team for Britain, hasn't it?
Yes, certainly. We have came back truly to the world stage last May, so almost like exactly a year to the World Cup. We then went to European qualifications, we qualified, we then went to Europeans, we qualified for Worlds, and we went to World Championships, all within 9 months. So it's been a wild ride that no one predicted. So, yeah.
Now, that's a very brief description of the 12 months, but it obviously was a lot harder work on that, and there were no guarantees on that. So what changed? Where did it first start? You mentioned May last year. Where did it first start?
I think it started maybe a couple of years before that, or almost like 18 months before that. The program got a tiny little bit of funding on like a little bit more recognition from now GB Aquatics to start a senior squad. There are junior squads that go to a Europeans every year, but there was no senior squad. And it started, honestly, with about 12 girls saying they would be interested. And then it sort of grew, and there was a little bit of training here and there, going away for like a week, going away a week here. And then, yeah, in the last 9 months, it just sped up very quickly.
You mentioned there were a group there of girls that were a little bit interested. I mean, I'm a little bit interested in competing at the Olympics, but I don't think it's going to happen for me, but it could happen for you guys. So actually tell us about the group and why you are where you are now.
I think to summarize the group of GB water polo, the girls we have a current squad of about 20 girls, and they are all so incredibly committed to water polo. There is several of us that all play abroad. We've gone to university abroad. We are now playing in clubs across Europe.
So you're all professional players?
I think there's 6 of us this year in the squad that are playing abroad professionally. Then we have a couple of juniors that have just gone across to play in the NCAA league in America. So again, amateur league, but a very good league. And then the rest are situated in Britain.
And you mentioned there about playing abroad. What countries, because we as a nation don't know really anything about water polo, despite, as Michael said, it being in the Olympics since day dot, or the 1900 edition. Where is its strengths? Where do you go and play?
Across Europe, there are professional leagues for a range of different teams. Greece, Hungary, Spain, Italy, and France, you can all play professionally in for a league from September all the way around to June time ends. We have one girl in the Greek league, one girl in the Italian league, two girls in the French league, two girls in the Spanish league currently. But before, this is quite new. I think before we had three girls last year, and before that, one girl. And so it's like increasing. So yeah, it's growing.
So that really does show why you finished 7th in the European Championships and why you qualified for your first Worlds in a decade.
Yes, for sure. And it comes from like the individual commitments of all the girls. It's not just the girls that go abroad. Like there is a lot of girls that commit to a lot of training in the UK as well, around their full-time jobs, and that should definitely be recognised. But a lot of experience comes from the girls that have gone away, or like the older girls that maybe had experience when we used to have funding back in like 2013, 2014. Those girls that benefited from that. And then since the funding cut, they've just played it in Britain, and then they have brought a lot of experience to our team as well.
Let's talk a little bit with you, Kathy, about funding, because we know that Great Britain did, as the host nation, have water polo teams in London in 2012. Was that the opportunity then in 2013, 2014 to build on that inclusion? And then what kind of missed opportunity was there that then you lost the funding as a sport, as a programme?
Yes, in 2012 we had funding up into the Olympics, and I think it was promised through to 2014, but it was contingent on like a ranking we gained at World Champs, and we missed the ranking. It's hard if you know water polo like inside out, and you look at like the groups that had the World Cup in. Great Britain was in the hardest group by a long way, and you put them in any other group and they would have made the qualification to get the funding. So before in 2013, they knew the funding was going to stop in 2014 because they had missed this world ranking. But in 2014, they then went on and beat the current world champion Spain in games. It was a really competitive team, and it had grown from the moment they got the Olympics. They had players playing all over Europe, girls that were then back in Australia playing, girls that came from America, all over playing, built up to 2012. They put a really competitive team into the Olympics. And then after 2014, when there was no funding, the girls that were funded and had done the Olympics sort of said, like, this is the end of my journey, understandably. And then it sort of halted because there was no funding. There was nothing to do. And then the only way of gaining funding, we were told, is like, oh, Olympic qualification or the next stage and the next stage. But if you don't have funding, you can't get to Olympic qualification or anything.
It seems to me, and I don't want to point the finger at certain sports, but some sports on the Olympic programme, you think to yourself, well, you must need a lot of backing to have got to where you are to be part of that sport, part of that programme. But when I think of water polo, and I include maybe volleyball or basketball or handball in this is a team sport that lots of people can go and play quite easily.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think when you look at performance sport, or you look at sports like athletics, cycling, swimming, the amount of medals they can bring in, because they're individual sports, is really high. So for performance sports, that's sort of where the money sits. But then when you look at grassroots team sports, you can include more people, and there is like the availability of playing water polo across the country. But again, you never really see it on TV or in any media or anything like that. People don't really know its existence is there. And like handball, basketball, a bit more people know about, obviously, but like it sits in that same sort of category.
You mentioned earlier that things have changed in the last few years, and you've got a bit of funding, and obviously Aquatics GB, or British Swimming, has become Aquatics GB as well. How important is all of that for progress now ahead of LA 28?
I think it's really, really important. just the name Aquatics GB, noticing it has 5 disciplines and it's not just swimming is really important. I know that the divers and the synchro swimmers and the para swimmers have all said the same thing, that we feel much more included. And recognizing that, we've come off such a little amount of funding and we've qualified for Worlds, something that no one ever expected for us to do, that we do have the talent and we do have the potential to really push for a qualification spot for the next Worlds. Like, for us as a program, we've qualified for the next Europeans, but we're not sure about the next Worlds, and we're not sure about the Worlds after that. So we're still in the very foundational stage, but I think we have shown there is potential, that you've given us a little and we've really, really taken it a long way. And I think GB Aquatics has noticed that, and I feel like we have been more included in multiple different ways. So it is important for sure.
And the pinnacle is obviously the Olympics. And you mentioned you don't know whether you're going to the next Worlds. There's a long way to go, but that's the dream, isn't it? That's the aim. I
think it is, and it's we're talking about it almost, because after 2012, it wasn't a thing that was ever discussed, because in 2012 there was only 8 women's teams in the Olympics, including the host nation, and now there's 10 women's teams. It's extremely competitive to get into. So it was never even discussed. Even going to Worlds or Europeans wasn't discussed. I was always oh, my goal is to play professionally, because our national team wasn't there. So it's on the cards, but we're taking one step at a time, I think, with the thing. But it is definitely something that should be written out as an option. We were 2 spots off qualifying this time. It's done on geographical location as well, so it's a little trickier we claim 2 spots, but maybe those spots would have gone to different geographical locations, but we were 2 spots away. And it's frustrating as well, because the men have 2 more spots in the Olympics. They send 12 teams and the women get 10. And if we had 12 teams, then potentially we could have gone this time. But again, that's a different issue.
The fact that the games are being held in America, in Los Angeles in 2028, obviously France this time around as a host nation would get an automatic qualification place. So does that open things up for you ahead of 28? Because, there isn't that host nation European country already in there?
Potentially. By it being in the United States, it sort of guarantees Canada's qualification. And Canada is a team that was 2 spots above us, and we competed for and with. So it shifts differently. Other countries like South Africa, they withdrew from the Olympics, which means Canada get to go this time because they didn't directly qualify. And then after Canada was China. We had a 5-goal game with China, but we're not competing with China for their qualification spot. We're still competing with the European nations, and it's a very competitive environment.
So what can you tell us about the calendar then, if you like, between now and when teams might qualify and begin to put their names, in the hat for 2028? What do we know about that at the minute?
It's done off spots from world champs, spots from Europeans, spots from other Pan Ams, spots from the Asian Games. But that is mainly done in 2027. So the aim for us is to get to those events. So we have automatically qualified for the 2026 European Games, which is fantastic because we had to qualify. We didn't had to qualify for the last one, so we don't have to qualify now because we became top 8. And then Worlds is next year. They haven't released how that's the qualification stage in Singapore is for the World Aquatics in Singapore, but it's the ones after 2026, the 2027 World Champs, that you have to probably be present at to gain qualification for the Olympics.
So, Kathy, how did you start playing water polo?
There was a little side to my swim club. I started a club called Seagulls Swim Club in Christchurch, and there was a little side, and my brothers went, and I was very competitive with my brothers, and I was for sure I can do that. And it just went from a 1 session on a Saturday morning to a couple of sessions a week, and then it just took off. A little side to my swim club.
And if you Google water polo, it says it's the toughest sport out there. I see that you're only allowed to touch the ball with one hand, and you don't touch the bottom of the pool either.
No. So the goalkeeper's allowed 2 hands to make saves, but you tread water constantly. No one touches the bottom of the pool. You're either treading water or swimming. It's played above water. The ball doesn't go underwater. That's a foul. It's similar to basketball in terms of it changes possession every 30 seconds. So everyone must swim up and down at least once every 30 seconds. Sometimes you go through that shot clock quicker. but it's very physical. It's definitely got the physicalities of like a bit of wrestling, a bit of rugby. Like it's very one-on-one physical. So I think that's where it comes from, that the lack of touching the ground and the physicality is why people claim it's a really tough sport.
You say physically, it's brutal at times, isn't it? I mean, I watched some in 2012, and obviously doing the job that I do, I try and keep across watching things online. It's absolutely brutal.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of like, you hold each other's swimsuits a lot, you fight position. Yeah, plenty of injuries. Again, a bit like rugby, you get plenty of injuries. It's the same sort of style of brutality, I guess. The ref is above water, so can't see underwater, but it's always interesting to watch the underwater cameras to see what's actually going on, because you can't see half of the game.
Interesting as well, you say you wanted to play because you saw your brothers doing something similar. The last guest that we had on our podcast that followed in their brother's footsteps was the sailor Hannah Mills. Now, she's won 2 Olympic golds and an Olympic silver, so let's hope there's an omen for you there moving forward. But the serious point, where once you begin playing, and for young boys, young girls listening to this now in this country, when you begin playing, what is the pathway now? What can we look at that we've got at the moment, and what can we look at that we need to have as a pathway?
I think you all start at like your little individual club that is attached to different swim clubs along those sort of lines. I think where we might struggle is like the lack of competition in Britain, that there is not as many teams as there could be. I know lots of swim clubs aren't so keen on having water polo because the swim coaches are like, I'd much prefer you focus on swimming and not water polo.
And I remember, Kathy, there was obviously a dedicated pool at the 2012 Olympic Park. It was opposite the Aquatics Centre. This may be the most stupidest question you've ever heard, but do you need a specific type of pool for water polo, or can you play in any pool?
No, you can play in any pool. Maybe for men's is technically meant to be played in a 30-meter pool. So like for top level men's games in Britain, it needs to be played in an Olympic pool. But for kids, for women, for anything, you can play it in a 25-meter pool. And I think realistically for men, you can also play in a 25-meter pool. It just changes a little bit. You get like dedicated pool sizes, like across Hungary, Spain, everywhere. You have 30 by 30 swimming pools that are dedicated for water polo. But again, any pool does.
And the reason I asked that question is because of what's the future for the sport. You kind of want to be able to say, well, look, this can be done anywhere. As you say, the swimming coaches need to go, well, we'll give you some time.
Yes, no, for sure. There is definitely the space and the time, and I think it increases enjoyment. Like, you don't go to PE lessons and just run in straight lines. You play football and you play rugby and you play netball and you do lots of different things. And I think lots of people don't necessarily enjoy the experience of swimming, but the experience of playing a team sport like water polo, like you don't have to play it in a deep end. Like no one needs to be treading water the whole time. You can play it in a shallow end. You can teach kids nice and friendly ways of playing water polo, a bit of fun, and get people involved in that way. I think also within school swimming, water confidence is something that I always argue you gain in water polo. Like there's a lot of water being splashed, you go underwater, you go above water. It's very important to be able to swim, but it's also very important to like not be able to panic and go underwater and get water everywhere. And I think water polo is a fun way of gaining like confidence in that style.
Obviously the Paris Olympics is going to come too soon for you guys, but the water polo competitions will happen and there might be some coverage in the summer. So people that maybe, find themselves watching a bit of water polo in the summer, what should they be watching out for in terms of the rules and the terminology? The
rules, again, no touching the bottom and one hand. You swim up the pool and you set up an arc, so 5 people on the outside and a centre forward in the middle. The balls pass around, and the goals look like football goals that float in the water, and the aim is to throw it in. It's a pretty exciting game because there's a lot of change of possession, there's a lot of fouls. The main thing is that it's quite easy to be sent out or get a major foul, which you get 3 personal fouls every game, and you're excluded from the field for 20 seconds. So then you're in like a man-up situation. Yeah, there's lots of different rules, but it's actually a pretty simple game. Like in terms of basics, the aim is to throw the ball around, put it in the goal. A bit like football, kick the ball around, put it in the goal. Simple.
End to end and lots of goals. You can sit and watch football for 2 hours and not see a goal. Not the same in water polo.
Yes. No, lots of goals. I reckon an average score would be like 12 goals, like 10, 12, but you can have I've seen last year, Japan, Hungary was 25-22. I've also seen games where it's like 5-3 on the international stage. So like it's a real big mixture, and that makes it super exciting. It's a very physical game. So watching people, the ball comes into center forward, there's 3 people on them, they're under the water, and watching them trying to finish is super exciting and pretty phenomenal, watching some of the best athletes do that.
Final couple of questions, Kathy, and we'll wrap up. On women's sport, you can look at the progress that Britain has made in the world of football, and we'll see at the Olympics, of course. I think more women will go for Team GB than men. It's so important that we're showing that there are such different sports for young girls to play.
No, I agree. And I think something that's wonderful about water polo is at any level, you can have any body shape and play. Like you can... Every and anyone can play water polo, and it is phenomenal. It's good in terms of like confidence, like in swimsuits and different things. Like I think young girls experiencing like being in a team environment where, like I think lots of girls struggle with body issue. Being in a swimsuit can be quite challenging. But I think once you're in a water polo suit and you're with your friends and you're enjoying it and you're having fun, and it doesn't matter how you feel in your body, you will be able to play. I think that's really, really important. And I'd love young girls to know that you can have any look however you are, your body shape. And you see that on the world stage. You'll see center forwards that are really, really strong and muscular. And then you have some girls on the wing that are 6'2" and super, super lean. And then you have some very small players. And I think that's something wonderful about water polo, that there is a place for everyone in our team.
And final question, following on from what Michael said, who's going to win the Paris Olympics? Who's going to win the men's? Who's going to win the women's?
USA has won the last few, and they had a little dip, but they performed really well at Worlds. So USA, I wouldn't write Spain or Holland off, but that's my guess. And for men, Hungary is a really big option for me. I'm really intrigued to see how the French men. It'd be phenomenal to see them do well in a home nation, because they've never been a dominant nation of water polo. To watch them play at home will be really cool. And then you have the classics, Serbia, Croatia played phenomenally at Worlds, Spain, Spanish men at Europeans. So yeah, I'm going for Hungary for men and USA for women. But you never know with water polo, it really could be anyway. They might not medal those teams. So yeah, that's an exciting thing about it.
Well, Kathy, I'm off to race down to the betting shop now to get my hard-earned cash on those 2 nations. But more importantly than that, as the father of a teenage daughter and another daughter who's on the cusp of becoming a teenager, I think I'll take and thank you for your inspirational words as well about keeping young women in sport, because I think that is such an important message, and one that you have really eloquently put across today on the podcast. Kathy Rogers, captain of Great Britain's women's water polo team, thank you for speaking to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.